Deuteronomy 16. I'm gonna have to keep this one simple because I'm low on energy right now, but let's call this one blinds. Why? Because that term literally comes out of roughly the middle toward the end of the chapter where it's talking about justice, but roughly it breaks down in threes, and so will the next few chapters. This third, or at least the first third, is going to have to do with the 3 times of the year that the men of Israel are to gather at God's chosen places. It's going to be during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, otherwise called the Feast of Pentecost, and then at the Feast of Booths, the last feast of the year. After he talks about the 3 times during the year that the men should gather at the chosen place, he's going to talk about justice and say that justice and only justice should be done in the courts. It sounds self-explanatory, but the more we really get into looking at the lives of the Israelis and our own lives, you can realize the ways in which competing self-interest can make justice a difficult thing to do, even when it's relatively easy to understand. And we'll talk about that after we talk about the final third, and that final third is also making sure that only the Lord's altar is to be set up at his chosen place, not a tree or a pole to be set up next to it. And the reason for those trees and poles would be basically dedications to other gods. And so it's basically 2 areas of purity that he's calling for: purity in the courts and then purity in worship. And the purity in worship part can seem weird until we look at modern trends, even in Christianity, of what we would call syncretism, meaning before Christianity really became accepted, as it was first exiting the era of persecution, syncretism was the first kind of waypoint before Christians could really worship freely. Constantine is typically viewed as the Roman ruler who first allowed Christianity kind of out of the dungeon of society, at least Roman society, and he accepted it because he seemed to see that it had value for his rule. However, in trying to blend many cultures together, he didn't simply allow Christianity to stand on its own, and he tried to syncretize it with the existing beliefs of other groups that weren't so much Christian but might be open to it if they could simply syncretize it with things they were already doing. And out of that, we've gotten things like Christmas and Easter, which most folks will tell you when they study it are otherwise pagan holidays that survive to this day, even in our culture, as really syncretistic holidays that were blended with early Christianity that we still practice today. Beyond that, I'm not going to get off into it because we've studied it here before, but there are other secret societies that say you can be a Christian as long as it doesn't interfere with your priorities to the organization. I'm going to name it. Freemasonry is one of those. Anytime you are blending Christianity, which is basically an open book, you're either going to believe it or not, but its tenets are stated and they're there for you to read. But when you're blending Christianity with a belief system that says we will reveal to you the full secrets of what's really going on in this belief system, after you pass a few phases, then that's almost like buying a house where you got to pay full price for the house, but you don't get to look in the basement. And that's the illustration we've used before. And the reason why that's kind of suspect is for obvious reasons. If you will want to see everything that's going on in getting an analysis of your home before you would buy it, how much more your belief system. More importantly, that links back into the concept of justice, where he is going to say this in verse 19 of chapter 16. You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show partiality. You shall not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and subverts the cause of the righteous. And he's saying, look, a bribe blinds even the wisest of individuals. And be careful to notice that it doesn't talk about a monetary bribe, but there are many times when we can be bribed either by money, influence, or opening doors to the right circles that can prevent the wisdom that God is giving us from allowing us to clearly see. And the one thing that he's saying here is be careful of compromising clear vision for personal gain or advantage, because no matter how wise we are, the gifts that God has given us, the wisdom that we might be known for is compromised when we sell it, basically, for either influence, money, or whatever can compromise our vision. And so one of the reasons why we say his best to you as you go forward with him is to help prevent us from compromising the good sense and the wisdom that God has given us with trying to take shortcuts to get ahead. And so with that, his best to you as you go forward in him in the full wisdom and vision that God's blessed you with.